It's Mr. Y, the social studies guy, continuing our series on Ohio's 88 counties. Today we are in Seneca County. Seneca County was named for the Seneca Indians who lived in this part of northwest Ohio. They were the furthest west of the Iroquois Confederation. Unfortunately, they were the first tribe that was forced to leave Ohio by the United States government. But we'll find out a little later when we go to the village of Green Springs, which was the main Seneca County village in this area. We'll talk more about that particular tribe. We're in Tiffin, Ohio, which is the county seat. And as we mentioned earlier when we started this series, we'd be always starting out with Ohio's historic courthouses. Well, here in Tiffin, there's quite an interesting story about what is behind me right now, which is known as the Seneca County Justice Center. And that is that they had a beautiful courthouse here in Tiffin, Ohio, built in 1882, that was really the pride of the county. Well, it was added on to over the years, but there was a lot of problems that propped up as we got into the 20th century. And what happened was there was a lot of controversy about either tearing down that old courthouse and building a new one, or going ahead preserving the courthouse. And what happened was, despite the best efforts of people that wanted to preserve it, the county commissioners at the time said, oh, it will be cheaper to build a new one than to actually renew the beautiful courthouse that was here. But unfortunately, when all was said and done, and behind me again is the Seneca County Justice Center, not even referred to as the courthouse, but when all was said and done, it would have been cheaper to restore the previous courthouse. This is a first in Ohio, though, that in this Justice Center is the first one to combine all the county courts into one building. For example, in Sandusky County, which we showed you earlier, there, besides the courthouse in Fremont, there's also courts in Clyde and in Woodville. Well, here, this is everything for Seneca County. So a lot of controversy. In fact, the largest newspaper in Northwest Ohio, the Toledo Blade, once this building was completed, was very dismissive of it and thought it was actually an insult to the people that lived here in Seneca County. But yet as you talk to people, they've become now where they really have accepted it. And if you look at it architecturally, it doesn't contain some of the same properties of the previous courthouse. So this is the Seneca County Justice Center. Now right behind me, though, we see a very large statue of William Harvey Gibson. Now, we have to understand first off that we're in Tiffin. This is not Gibson. Actually, Gibson has something to do with the town of Gibsonburg that he founded in Sandusky County. But this town actually was named after Edward Tiffin, Ohio's first governor. So the statue, though, is once again of William Harvey Gibson, who was a noted lawyer here in Tiffin and in Seneca County. He also was one of the founders of the Ohio Republican Party. He was also treasurer of the state of Ohio, and unfortunately had to resign in disgrace, because what happened is when he took that job, he found out that there was quite a bit of money missing. He did not want to implicate the person he succeeded, so he tried to get that person to find out what was all going on, why this money was gone, and unfortunately lost his job because of that. But he was able to restore his reputation as being a brigadier general during Ohio's participation in the Civil War. So he is known as being one of the great trial lawyers in the state of Ohio. If you remember back in Sandusky County, we talked about President Hayes, who was an attorney also, and he was of course in Fremont, but they all knew each other. And President Hayes had mentioned that if there was a great lawyer, if there was someone who really knew how to spellbound a jury, it was William Harvey Gibson. So that's what this statue is all about. One of the great lawyers of Seneca County, William Harvey Gibson. We're here in the village of Old Fort, one of the smaller villages in Seneca County, but one that has an important history. Because remember we talked back in the Sandusky County video about the Battle of Fort Stephenson. Well, here in Seneca County, in Tiffin, we had what was called Camp Ball. That was established by General William Henry Harrison with Colonel Ball in command. But they also, Harrison built the fort called Fort Seneca. Now, there's still a very small little area called Fort Seneca, even smaller than Old Fort, but 2 miles away from Fort Seneca was the fort, so very close to Old Fort. This is not a reconstruction of the actual fort, by the way, okay? But what happened was the historical part was actually pretty interesting, because again, if you remember that William Henry Harrison had sent orders to Major Croghan to not defend the fort and to retreat and get back out of there. And of course, Croghan, as we know, defied that and fought the battle, which he won, luckily. But what happened, and how it all falls together with Seneca County, is that Harrison had Colonel Ball take your men and troops to go up there, and Croghan of his command. And of course, what happened is they got closer, they heard cannon fire, they knew there was a battle going on, and when they actually arrived, they found out that Croghan had saved Fort Stephenson. So we have that whole area with the Sandusky County River, which is kind of behind us here, okay? And these forts along the way, going again from Fort Seneca, okay, then we have Fort Stephenson, okay? And along the way, this whole waterway was so important to the War of 1812. One of the things that makes Tiffin unusual, particularly for a town of 18,000 people, is there are two universities here, and we're at the oldest one, Heidelberg University, which was founded in 1850. Now, obviously, a lot of people would realize that Heidelberg University, it actually was Heidelberg College for many years, wasn't until not that long ago it became known as a university, but was named after Heidelberg in Germany. Now, there's a very interesting story regarding their athletic teams that are here, which are known as the Student Princes. Now, this goes back to Germany once again for the operetta about the Student Prince of Heidelberg, which is really a very interesting story. In fact, it was also made into a silent movie, then remade into 2 other movies, because in this particular event, what happens is the prince really does not want to go to college, does not think he's going to enjoy college, but goes on to become really involved in the school and finds out it is a very good fit for him as a student. So it's a very unusual college nickname. The only student princes in the United States for their athletic teams are right here on this particular campus. Now, this is a very beautiful campus. As you can see from some of the shots, there's some really historic architecture which is here, and it's a very, very nice campus. As you can see, that it's one of the real highlights of Tiffin, Ohio, Heidelberg University. We mentioned earlier about Tiffin being unusual for a fairly small town to have 2 universities. This is the newer one, which is Tiffin University. We're right here at what's called the Hayes Courtyard. Remember, we talked about President Hayes back in Sandusky County. Now, President Hayes was not really affiliated with this particular school, but again, you'll see a lot of Hayes things throughout Northwest Ohio. Hayes, of course, was founder of the Ohio State University. But here in Tiffin, what's quite interesting is that Heidelberg College, now Heidelberg University, actually started off downtown Tiffin in an uptown storefront with 5 students. By the end of the first year, they were up to 150. So there was a need here in this community for higher education. Now, what happens is Heidelberg was known then, as is now, as a liberal arts university. But they needed to serve people who were more interested in also getting an education in business. So they actually started Tiffin University as a spin-off from Heidelberg. They were actually on the Heidelberg campus, is where they started at, but they were offering courses that were not liberal arts. So what happened is, as they started to grow, there was a need for this particular campus. And this campus has really grown over the years. Again, many of the buildings are brand new. They have put a lot of money that's been put into this college. They are Division II in athletics. Heidelberg with the Student Princes was Division III. Here they're Division II, and they're called the Dragons. And as you look around this particular campus, you can see the architecture is still all kind of ties in together. They've done a wonderful job here. And this college has grown tremendously in the last 10 years as they have outmoded just not only business courses, but they've got into a lot of different courses along the way. And now they have graduate courses here also. So this is Tiffin University, the Dragons. Okay, we're here inside the American Civil War Museum of Ohio. And right next to me is Gary Dundor, who is the curator of this wonderful museum. And Gary, this is a tremendous resource for, not just for Tiffin, but for Ohio. Anyone who's interested in the Civil War is going to just have a wonderful time here going through all these exhibits. The question I have as we've been going around Seneca County to different places is, how did this wonderful museum about the Civil War end up in Tiffin, Ohio?
Well, it started up in Bowling Green. It was up there for a couple of years. And then they outgrew it. So they closed it down and started looking for another place. Well, there were several towns in southern Ohio, and also Tiffin was in the running. A couple buildings in Tiffin came available, and they chose that this was particularly doable because it was donated by a couple entrepreneurs to the American Civil War Museum of Ohio, and that's whose name was on the deed. So we're just caretakers of this building, and it looks quite similar to like the big columns in the front, like Lincoln, associated with it.
And this was a post office at that time.
This is the 1915 built, opened 1916 post office, and closed approximately 1970, and then became a high school index for Tiffin, Columbia. It was about that for 30 years and closed down. And then one of our government people, Paul Gilmore, was going to make his offices here. Passed away, so that kind of ended it right there, and then it sat for a while. So then when the funds from Ohio and the local funds renovated it to the point we have now.
Which is absolutely wonderful. How many rooms is this all together?
The 6 rooms upstairs and about 6 rooms downstairs. They're approximately 5,000 square feet per floor. We have 2 floors.
That's an amazing. So this is a real, to me, a real crown jewel of Seneca County. It really is.
I tell everybody that comes in, we're the best kept secret in Tiffin. Most of our traffic is from out of town.
That's what I was going to ask, as far as people that really are Civil War students and people that are really interested in the Civil War.
Yeah.
They look for you. They come in here and they come to Tiffin, and once they come to Tiffin, they probably do this and spend some money in all some of the businesses and stuff while they're here.
Correct. We're all volunteers here. There's no paid staff. So, and we're not government funded either.
Right.
So we try to make it as best we can. We have memberships, through the door traffic, donations, and we send out a fundraiser letter once a year.
Once a year. Well, hopefully people will take advantage of that. I found it very, very interesting. Of course, I was born south of the Mason-Dixon line, so I've always had an interest in the Civil War. It's always something when I was growing up. My family, we go to Gettysburg so often. It was like almost an annual trip to go to Gettysburg. And I've always found it really fun to just go and find out more and more about this terrible conflict, which is such a huge part of our history.
Yes, brother against brother, the like. Oh, we don't hold it against you. We don't start partiality here. We have both sides displayed.
Exactly. That's one of the nice things about it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for asking. And
thank you.
Tell everybody about us.
We will definitely do that on our YouTube channel, Ohio's 88 Counties. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we're here in Tiffin, Ohio, and we're in front of a very beautiful St. Paul's Methodist Episcopal Church. And there's a historical sign here that explains why this is a very important building. And that is that we're going to see a little bit about a very famous person we go to Huron County called Thomas Edison, who grew up in Lyon, Ohio, has a wonderful boyhood home and museum there, and we get into Huron, Ohio. But Thomas Edison, of course, was known for many different inventions. But by far, his most important one was the electric light, the light bulb that we take for granted nowadays. And in this particular church, what happened was that they were one of the first churches in the United States to be wired for electricity. And what happened was, as we can see on this sign, that when this church was dedicated in 1884, that the Edison Electric Light Company provided illumination for the ceremony by gifting them a very ornate brass chandelier that made this such an important church to have electrical power. One of the first in the United States that actually was able to provide electric light here at this particular church. And we also find out here that the Tiffin, right here in Tiffin, Edison Electric Illuminating Company, was the first power station in Ohio and only the 10th in the United States. So this is a very important part of Tiffin history. Once again, the St. Paul's Methodist Episcopal Church. Seneca County has had a very interesting industry that not only here in Tiffin where we're at right now, but also in Fostoria. And for a lot of glass collectors, this is a real mecca right here in Seneca County. Now, right now we're at the Tiffin Glass Museum. There's also another one in Fostoria. And this is a place where you can go through and see a lot of really awesome pieces of glass. Now, the good news is that they also have glass for sale. Now, the museum itself, there's actually a guided tour that you go through it, and they explain everything that was used as far as making it. The tools are there as far as making it, and it's very interesting. So when you go ahead and start thinking of people that are buying stemware, for example, for a wedding or whatever, this is a great place to come, and also the one in Fostoria. So, known for the glass industries here in Seneca County, Tiffin and Fostoria. We're standing in front of one of Tiffin's most iconic businesses, Ballreichs potato chips. And I gotta tell you, if you haven't had them, you need to get some because these are just amazing. And it's quite a story over here regarding this particular factory. That the company was started by Fred and Ethel Ballreich in 1920. You can see it's even on their trucks and on their trailers when it was started. They're very proud of their history. Well, they started out at home in their garage on a dirt floor with a copper kettle. And through a lot of hard work, they were able to make 14 pounds of potato chips a day. And boy, I'll tell you what, right off the bat, they were very popular. So actually his brother and his wife got in, and it became a very big family-oriented business. Now you have to understand, in Ohio, there's a lot of potato chip companies. And if you look, for example, in Dayton, there's Mike Sells. In Canton, there's Shears. In Mansfield, there's Jones. Cleveland has Dan D. There's a lot of places that sell potato chips. But if you're in Northwest Ohio, where we're at right now, obviously in Seneca County, and throughout Northwest Ohio, this is the bag of chips that people want to have and they want to eat. In fact, it's pretty amazing that these are actually sent in boxes all over the world. People that have grown up here in Tiffin or went to school at one of the colleges we're going to be talking about, they want to have their Ballreichs chips. Now, what happened is by the time you hit the 1960s, they're making 2,000 pounds of chips an hour. So the technology has grown so much. In the 1990s, it became a full snack food company. And now they actually partner with different places, like right here in Tiffin, the wonderful Madison Street Tavern. They have their own different flavors that they develop with Ballreichs. In Ottawa County, we go up there and they have the Orchard Farm Stand, which they have a peach Ballreichs. So there's a lot of different flavors along the way, holding one of my personal favorites here, the honey butter ones. Now, a lot of people dislike the original, the Marcel chips, and that's what they became known for, the wavy chips that were named after the very popular hairstyle in the 1920s, the Marcel or wavy hairstyle that a lot of women use. And in Northwest Ohio, when you're having a graduation party or even a wedding, you need to have your Roots chicken sandwich from Fremont, Ohio, Sandusky County, and your Ballreichs chips from right here in Seneca County, because trust me, they're an institution. You're going to love them. We're here in Seneca County's second largest city, Fostoria. Fostoria is an interesting city in many ways. For one, it's actually part of three counties, Seneca, Wood, and also Hancock County. But we're here talking today about a very unique tourist attraction. Fostoria has what is called the Iron Triangle Rail Park. There's over 100 freight trains that go through Fostoria every day. Now, Ohio is the fifth largest state in the country as far as railroad traffic. Well, a lot of it you'll see right here in Fostoria, Ohio, particularly at this very interesting rail park. It's really a good history here because the railroads that come through here, this has been something that has been a big part of Fostoria, the growth of Fostoria, which was known for its glass industries at one time. But today, this is probably their most popular tourist attraction. And railroad people that really love the railroads love to come here. We have a restored caboose right next to where we're standing. We have trains going by right now. And it is possible to see, as the name says, you could have 3 trains going by at the same time, which is very unusual. So I'd highly recommend a visit to Fostoria, Ohio to see the Iron Triangle Rail Park. We are right here at one of the holiest places in Seneca County. Seneca County is known for having a lot of churches, but this is the great pilgrimage center called the Sorrowful Mother Shrine. Now, this particular shrine was started by Father Francis de Sales Brunner, who was with the priests of the Precious Blood, and they came over from Germany and Switzerland. And in 1850, he built this beautiful shrine here. He was also responsible for building numerous parishes throughout Northwest Ohio to serve the German Catholic farmers that were coming over. Particularly St. Boniface Church in New Riegel would be another one that you could visit in Seneca County. The shrine itself is wonderful. It is a pilgrimage site for people from all over the Midwest. Not just Ohio, even in Canada. People come here to take pilgrimages. This beautiful setting, it's just so wonderful. Right behind me is Our Lady of Lourdes Grotto, which gives you an idea of how the setting is here. Very natural setting. It will take you a while to go through if you want to see everything and stop and pray and read. But there's plenty of places to sit and relax. I would highly recommend it here if you have any devotion to the Virgin Mother Mary, that you come and visit Sorrowful Mother's Shrine. It will be well worth your time. We are here at one of Seneca County's most unique tourist attractions. And today we are at Seneca Caverns, and we are very fortunate to have Denise, who is the director here, one of her many jobs as far as Seneca Caverns, who could tell us more about this really awesome place. And Denise, the first thing I'd like to ask you is, what is the history of Seneca Caverns? How was it founded?
Well, Seneca Caverns was discovered in 1872 by a couple boys hunting rabbits. So this was all, at that time, that we had the cemetery that dates back to 1820, but this was just a farm field in this area here. So a couple boys hunting rabbits, the dog chased a rabbit to a brush pile, the dog disappeared, the rabbit disappeared, so of course the boys had to go running after it. It fell through an opening, a sinkhole opening actually, which led into the first level of the cave. So that was 1872.
Now, when did it become the tourist attraction it is today?
In 1933, it was my husband's parents, Don and Fanny Bell, who opened the cave up to the public. So they leased the cave from Emmanuel Good, who owned the cave and the property here for about 3 years. So we have to think in terms of the Depression and the physical labor involved in developing this cave is pretty incredible. So we are celebrating our 90th anniversary of the cave being open to the public and being in the Bell family. Yes.
That is great. And speaking of being open to the public, noticing just driving in all the license plates, not just from Ohio, but from different states. And we noticed a Canadian one that was out there. And you mentioned you guys keep track of all these visitors, and many come from foreign countries also.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we have a lot of international, yes.
You think of all the tourist attractions that are in Seneca County, which is quite a few. I don't think anybody else has this international community that you get
Probably not. No, I never really gave it any thought, but yes, yeah.
to do that. And we have a wonderful gift shop.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
We've met some of your very friendly employees who were really great, very helpful and stuff
Yes,
like that.
very good.
Now, are your tour guides all local kids or men, or who actually do you have before you give the tours?
They, all of them have all started when they were in high school or college. And I've got one who's a teacher, Tiffin Columbian teacher, so she's been with me for a long time, so she helps me on top. I've got another guy who's been with me, this is like his 14th summer. And then we have Lillian, who's starting to take a tour down now, and she's been, this is her fourth week with me, and so I have a lot of high school students that start in high school and stay with me through college during the summer months.
Absolutely
Yeah.
wonderful. Now, being it's obviously a natural cave, I assume it's pretty cold.
It's 52 degrees in the cave year round. Yes, it's the mean annual temperature of our area, so that it never changes.
So do you recommend people wear a jacket or
Yes,
sweatshirt?
that's right, yeah.
And how about as far as shoes?
Tennis shoes. Tennis shoes are what you're walking and climbing. These are natural stone steps and pathways that you're walking down. So the cave was formed by the rocks splitting or falling 7 to 12 feet, creating these different rooms or levels that go through the cave. So what connects them are these natural steps. So we have railings in areas, but there's a lot of it is rocks that you hold on to or touch as you walk down. The ceiling is low in areas, so you have to be able to duck your head. So the tour, how low the tour goes is determined by the water table. We have an underground river that flows through the cave, and it fluctuates. Snow melt, spring rain, summer rain, or the lack thereof, which is what we're really dealing with this summer. So we call it Old Mystery River. Olemist_RY River.
That is really wonderful. You have been so helpful. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. I appreciate you stopping.
Well, we appreciate it. So again, when you're out and about and traveling, coming to Seneca County, we highly recommend you visiting Seneca Caverns. We are here in Green Springs, Ohio, a small village of 1,300 people, which actually is divided equally between Sandusky County, which we earlier profiled, and Seneca County. Green Springs is very interesting. Most small towns, not only in Ohio but in the United States, have a hard time claiming that they have the world's largest whatever. Well, right behind us, we see the world's largest natural sulfur springs. Now, you can't smell it right now, but there is a strong smell, particularly at different times along the way. But for those people who live here, like myself, you kind of get used to it. Now, Green Springs itself has an interesting history. A lot of it goes along with this springs. Now, we mentioned the fact that Seneca County was named for the Seneca Indians. Well, Green Springs was their largest village. And one of the reasons they built their village here was because of this springs. Because if they were wounded in any battles that they had with fellow tribes, they could come here and use the medicinal qualities of this sulfur springs that they could heal themselves. So this was a natural spot for an Indian village. Now what happens is, further on in history, it becomes an actual Chautauqua, where people came from all over the United States to take the cure by bathing in this water, by drinking this water, and they actually had hospitals that were built up around here, hotels that filled this particular area of this springs. I mean, this was when people looked for natural cures along the way. So today we're actually on the grounds of the Spring Creek Nursing Center Hospital, where we're filming from, which was actually built by the Sisters of St. Francis that ran it for many years. So there's a tremendous history of healing here in Green Springs. But we go back to the Seneca Indians, and unfortunately, when the federal government under President Andrew Jackson did the Indian Relocation Act, they were the first tribe to be moved from Ohio. Now, we're not sure why. Obviously, the federal government picked them to be first with other tribes still here, but they were the first tribe, and that was in 1830. Okay, so then they had to be moved out to west. Now, in 1831, Jacob Stem comes to this area and buys the land for what is now Green Springs. Now, there was a lot of controversies to whether he actually bought the springs. Some people say that the Indians who were still here along the way, that were the last ones to relocate, actually sold it to him for corn and oats and different types of things for a very small amount. We don't know that. That's actually talked about. But we do have here in Green Springs a wonderful historical museum, particularly for a small town again, and it's called the Stemtown Museum, actually named after Jacob Stem. So what happens is, a lot of people even today say, what does Stemtown have to do with the museum? And that is because named after Jacob Stem. So this is besides being a quaint village, it's a very historical village. And a lot of people say the spirits of those Seneca Indians are still here because this was the land they chose, and they never wanted to leave this land. Now, I should mention that currently I am the president of the Stemtown Historical Museum, so I often have to explain these things to people along the way, and I'm sure glad I could do this for you today for this series. As we wrap up Seneca County, we're here at the Stemtown Historical Museum in Green Springs, and we thought this was an appropriate place to wrap it up because we started out talking about how Seneca County got its name from the Seneca Indians. And we mentioned earlier about the main village was here in Green Springs. And at this Stemtown Museum, there is a very large collection of Indian artifacts that were found right in this Green Springs area. So we thought this is a really appropriate way to finish up, but we don't want to not forget there's so many other places throughout Seneca County that we could be mentioning. We talked about Attica, we mentioned about New Regal, other small communities throughout Melmore, throughout Seneca County are well worth your time to visit also. But again, we hope you have a chance to visit, and we hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much.